Well, Macy's stock higher this morning after rejecting a 5.8 David Weston. David Weston, it's great to see you.
Great to be with you. Thank you for welcoming me.
Yeah.
It's great to be having you. So
I'm Scarlett Fu.
And I'm Katie Greifeld. Scarlett, it's in the more than $11 trillion global ETF industry. Over the past week, we've seen outflows across fixed income ETFs. And in just a moment, we'll speak to Caitlin Danhauser of Villanova University, who put out a study on bond ETFs.
And speaking of bonds, we'll speak to Alex Morris of FM Investments on the firm's newly launched investment-grade credit ETFs.
And sadly, unfortunately, not even close to Friday, but some ETF issuers are already saying TGIF. We dig into the fund launch trends in just a few minutes, but as always, Eric Bell from Bloomberg Intelligence. He's here with us now looking at the flows. Eric, what do you got?
Katie, Scarlett, thank you. So looking at the flows, I'll be honest.
I'm Katie Greifeld. Time now for the ETF brief, where I walk you through the trends and the stories that caught my eye in the ETF industry. And we start with the round Mag 7 ETF. As you might suspect, it holds the top 7 biggest tech stocks. Of course, it launched just in April, and it's already at an all-high, rising about 40% since inception just a couple of months ago. An interesting snapshot of just how dominant tech has been, of course, heading into the of earnings season. So good news on the big 7 tech stocks. Not so great when it comes to Chinese equities. Right now, we're taking a look at FXI versus the iShares.
Sarah Vegas and ETF at Bloomberg Intelligence. So Wednesday and Thursday being common days to launch an ETF. Other data did you manage to find when you were not looking at Bitcoin launches, Bitcoin ETF launches?
Yeah, it was a nice break from Bitcoin. But what I found out there, so that does skew it. And actually, we mentioned SPY, its birthday. Yeah. That launched on a Friday.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I didn't know that either until I looked more into it. So even if you take out those big outliers, Friday tends on average to do better.
That's really interesting, and maybe SPY skewing the results. I'm not sure. What can I do with this information, Athanasios?
Yeah, we just vibes out there. The reason why they do launch on Thursdays is because it takes a couple days to line up.
What about closures of ETFs?
So the same thing, if you just flip it, because have launched on Thursdays, that tends to be the day for closure.
Talk a little bit more about launches. You mentioned
Thursday, you seed it, and you don't want to wait over the weekend, and maybe a lot.
Ahead, we drill down into credit ETFs with Alex Morris of FM Investments next. This is ETF IQ on Bloomberg.
All right, we are 30 minutes into the U.S. trading day. It's Tuesday, January 23rd. Here are the stories that we're following for you. Earnings season is on. Shares of GE and United Airlines going in opposite directions after reporting their fourth quarter figures. We're going to break down what we learned and look ahead to who's on deck today, including Netflix. The streaming giant reports after the bell today, but shares are rallying after news broke this morning that Netflix has paid $5 billion for the exclusive rights to WWE's Raw, the company's first big move into live events. We'll talk to Nick Khan, WWE president, later this hour. And finally, digging into mining, we're going to get a check on the global copper markets and the business of mining with Robert Friedland. He is the founder of Ivanhoe Mines. Katie Greifeld in New York. Welcome to Bloomberg Markets. Indexes right now, not too much support. You have the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, and the SOX. Little changed at this moment. Of course, we know these indexes are coming out of their all-time highs, so a little bit of a breather. You check in on the VIX right now, trading with a 13 handle. Not much going on. Volatility continuing to drain out of this market. We heard from Amy Wu Silverman yesterday. Maybe the VIX isn't the best measure of volatility anymore. So that's the big macro picture. Let's get micro, because GE stock dropping after missing estimates ahead of its breakup coming in early April. For more on the future of the company, we're joined now by Brooke Sutherland of Bloomberg Opinion. And Brooke, a lackluster end, of course, to GE's days as a conglomerate. On Friday, former U.S. Treasury Secretary Bob Rubin joins David to talk about. We're 30 minutes into the U.S. trading day on this Wednesday, January 24th. Here are the top stories we're following you. Earnings season in full swing, with Netflix posting its biggest subscriber gain since the pandemic. Tesla takes the stage tonight. We'll preview what to expect. The physiognomy versus the financial economy. How does sentiment differ heading into the 2024 election? We'll discuss with the CEO of Snap-on, a maker of high-end tools and equipment. And finally, the 2024 media outlook. Activate CEO Michael Wolff joins us in our Wall Street Week daily segment to break it down. To Bloomberg markets, and let's start with a check on those markets because right now you have the S&P 500 about 0.5%, big tech doing even better, up about 0.8%. All is pretty quiet in the bond market, probably helping that equity rally, though I will note your yields currently above 4% and staying there. You take a look now for our daily Wall Street Week segment, and joining us now is Activate Strategies CEO and co-founder Michael Wolff, as well as Wall Street Conversation coming off of Netflix earnings.
After Netflix yesterday, I should say. Thanks so much, Katie. So it's great to have you back, Michael.
So it's quite an interesting time.
Yeah, well, especially for Netflix at the moment.
Yes.
They did awfully well, both in subscribers and revenue.
They're taking, 40% of their subscribers are coming from that ad-supported tier, and others are going to follow.
Well, they're also cracking down on password sharing. Of course, you think about the narrative around the 13.1 million subscribers that they added in the latest data, and it seems like most of that came from password sharing. Is that a playbook that some of these other big streamers are going to follow?
We don't know whether it came from limiting password sharing. A lot of it's coming because they're
Cable used to be. Is it the same thing, except I can get out of it a lot faster?
What we're going to, if you think about what basic cable did, and Disney Plus, and then also ESPN in that same package. So we are going to see that, but it's going to be a number of years away before we see the kind of profitability we saw in cable.
Well, coming to the viewer, I can understand why, these...
And all these services launched, it was the library that brought people there, and the originals kept them. It's now flipped the other.
When you think about the hysteria over the Dolphins-Chief game earlier this month that was on Peacock, my dad was texting me frustrated with actually on. How messy is the process of putting live sports onto streaming actually going to be?
Well, first of all, you've got to expect that each of the streaming services is going to have sports in one way or the other. And the real messiness is going to be from the perspective of the consumer, because how are they?
What the metaverse is? Where are those 300 million people?
Well, they're these immersive worlds like Roblox or Minecraft and some of these people are spending
30 minutes into the U.S. trading day on this Friday, January 26th. Here are the top stories that we're following. Shaking stocks fighting to go green, even as Intel's disappointing earnings report sends a shudder through chip stocks. And we'll get a read on restaurants and the state of inflation and food prices with Michael Osanloo, the CEO of Portillo's, a national fast casual chain. And a worrying fiscal outlook. Former Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin warned the U.S. is in a, quote, terrible place when it comes to its federal deficits. More in our Wall Street Week daily segment. Bloomberg markets, and as I mentioned, you have an S&P 500 right now fighting and failing to go green. You can see we're down by less than 1%. We'll see how we settle up. You take a look at big tech having a much worse day, down about 0.5%. A lot of that coming back. David, I think we're going to talk about weight loss drugs here.
Yeah, everybody's talking about it, right? So we might as well. Okay, Zach, thanks so much for being with us.
We're 30 minutes into the U.S. trading day on this Thursday, February 1st. Here are the top stories we're following. Shaking off the bad news is good news again, as higher than expected jobless claims help stocks rebound following a less dovish Jerome Powell. The January jobs report on deck tomorrow morning, but bracing for big tech. Apple, Amazon, and Meta all report earnings after the bell today after a lukewarm reception for Microsoft and Alphabet earlier this week. Do those numbers. And capitalizing on weight loss drugs, Zach Reitano, CEO of direct-to-consumer healthcare company Ro, he joins in our Wall Street Week daily segment, discussing demands he's seeing for GLP-1s. Welcome to Bloomberg Market. Take a look at these markets, and like I said, really struggling to rebound here. You have the S&P 500. It's in the green, up about 0.3%. Same thing, latest. Heavyweight economist David, thank you. This is Bloomberg. We're 30 minutes trading day on this Friday, February 2nd. Here are the top stories we're following. And famine in tech shares after the latest round of earnings. Apple sinks, Meta and Amazon pop. We'll discuss. No cracks here. March Fed rate cut bets evaporate. Another strong January jobs report. Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su joins in just a bit. And pent-up demand in the housing market on the other side of high rates. We'll discuss with Compass CEO Robert Reffkin. I don't know what your personal life looks like, but it feels like only things I talk about nowadays. And we have started to list there, but okay, so it's about the rate of change, not necessarily the level there. But what does that mean for prices, of course, because prices are also high and rising?
Yeah, there's historically a view that when mortgage rates go down,
You're saying is that lock-in effect easing more than anything else?
yeah, the good news is right now we actually have for the first time more inventory than last year. 7% more.
Or below. That's down from 72% last year. I mean, how much lower can it go, just looking at that trend?
Well, if things just stay where they are and there's not a big decrease in rates, which will make people feel
That maybe some of that alone.
Yeah, I mean, usually when people are fearful, that's where the opportunity is. And the condo market, for example, in San Francisco, we're starting to see much more buyer traffic is accelerating because companies are starting to ask their employer.
And you say that to an increase in prices. Can you quantify that fit right now? And I thought that was interesting, these sort of, I don't want to call them mid-tier cities, but outside of the traditional hubs. How is that playing into that return to office theme?
Yeah, well, what we call it is spillover migration. So markets that are adjacent to core marketing too expensive. So people are moving from San Francisco to Sacramento. They're moving where home prices have fallen the most. It's Austin. And what we see is the markets that the biggest COVID boom are, on the other side, they have the biggest pricing correction. The biggest winners in the last 2 years are the home builders, new construction. Both agents were the #1 brokerage firm in the country. And I'm very confident in the value that they provide both sellers and buyers. And we have continued to work with them to be able to display that value.
And Bloomberg Justin joins. And it was that last part of the conversation really fascinating when it comes to that 10% tariff. Maybe wouldn't have a lot of economic damage, but geopolitical damage.
I was a little surprised, actually. I thought he would be more concerned. Other people we've talked to have been more.
Not necessarily the economic policy of the time, but rather it was advances in technology, and you apply that to today's setup.
Well, and you hope, as he suggested in there, maybe generative AI could do something like going to the internet did in the late 90s.
Akin to basically the adoption of the internet, but I think I heard that argument around Bitcoin as well, cryptocurrency. So I'm a little bit skeptical of comparisons, but great conversation with Paul Krugman. I understand 6 p.m. tonight you have some other great.
We'll have some more with Paul Krugman. We'll also have Larry Summers, who has a bit of a view from Paul Krugman. And then we also have Sanal Desai of Franklin.
The base case. David Weston, so much. Of course, a lot more coverage coming up. This is Bloomberg.